A few days ago, I had said that there is a risk of a silver sell off in the next 2 days. And as one of my viewers correctly noted, there was a 1 penny sell off over 2 days. So, can I claim success that I had correctly made a market call? I said there was a sell off and it was down a penny. So technically I was right, right? Well, down a penny is basically flat. So what that tells you is that when someone gives you a market call, you need more than one dimension, right? I gave one dimension, up or down. That is not enough. You need how much up and how much down. I mean, the previous time I had a market call, I said risk of a big sell off. And there was I guess, big sell off, even though it wasn't defined, the, I guess, tone I was using and how much it fell seemed appropriate. But that is not enough. That's 2 dimensions. You need a third dimension. What is a third dimension? What was the magnitude of the investment involved or the bet involved? Because basically these markets are like betting. It's like a form of gambling with this unknown future and putting your money. So really, even though I had said before it was going to go down a bunch and it was a bunch, that is incomplete because I didn't give you any kind of magnitude. Let me give you an example. Say you're following someone, right? And they say, I'm going to make a bet on this market movement, and they give you numbers and they make $10,000. Wow, $10,000 on one bet. And they make 9 more bets, and those 9 other bets lose. But they only lost $100 in each one of those bets. So they had a big $10,000 winner, and they had $900 losses. So their total losses are 900, and their up is 10,000. So their net is $9,000. That's pretty good, even though they were right only 10% of the time. That's not what's important. What's important is the one time that they were right, they scored big, and the 9 times they were wrong were tiny. That's what it's all about. When someone's telling you predictions, the most important thing is, well, what is the big picture? Are you making one call that makes $10,000 and your other 9 calls lose 100? But so what? That's what's important. The flip side of that is someone might tell you how they're right 90% of the time. It's okay. That's good. What are the other dimensions? Maybe that 9 times in a row, their call would made you $100 each, and the 10th time their call would have cost you $10,000, right? So they were right 90% of the time, but if you listen to them, you'd be down $9,100, and that's not good. So when you hear people talk about predictions of up and down, really it's about how much is being bet, and the other thing is about how much these calls are in magnitude. And that's kind of really how you look at these things, is what are the other dimensions of these calls. And for people who are new to markets, they might not think of these other dimensions, but they are there, and they're actually the most important thing. Like when someone did a video like, Peter Schiff was right. Well, that doesn't tell you enough, because he made some great calls for several years in a row, and then he made some bad calls for several years in a row. But what is the magnitude, right? How much did he make on the up calls, and how much did he lose on the down calls? And you add them all together, and that tells you the real story. So it's not enough for someone to give you, I am right X% of the time. You want to know how they're doing each time they're right, and how they're doing each time they're wrong. And this helps you screen pundits. You do your own screening or filtering. You look around and you say, so-and-so is making calls. It's great. Well, they might say they're right X% of the time. But when they are right, how much are they making? And when they are wrong, how much are they losing? And that tells you a bigger story. In the past, I talked about Eric Jansen of iTulip, and in the past, I was really impressed with his analysis and his discussion and so forth. But if you go to his site, he doesn't give you these other dimensions. Like, he doesn't tell you magnitude. And when he tells you his great calls, those were great calls. But what about the not so great calls that are not being talked about? You got to look at all the calls, and you got to look at magnitude. For example, one of his premier articles is "Time at Last to Sell Silver," where he sold silver on the very day it peaked, and he had an article coming out, and that was spectacular. But if you read further, you see that his silver investment was a tiny percent of his total portfolio. A tiny percent. Like for him, investing 100 grand, for a lot of people watching YouTube, that's a big deal. For a heavy hitter like that, 100 grand was a drop in the bucket in his portfolio. And he didn't just buy silver at that time, he bought other things. For example, he bought silver and platinum, and he bought about the same amount of it. But if you want to look on his blog and find about platinum, you might not. It's really hard to find about platinum because he didn't sell. He missed the top of platinum, so he doesn't post about it. And when I had sent him a message saying, "Hey, you had an article, Time at SSL Silver. What about platinum?" His response was, "Well, platinum is such a tiny percent of my portfolio. I didn't think it was significant to talk about it. But I missed the top and I sold X percent. I still have some." I said, "That's great, and actually that makes sense." But if someone's going to say that my platinum call was not significant because it's a tiny part of my portfolio, and they're going to tout how big their silver call was, when in fact they had about the same dollar amount of platinum silver to start off with, that's not telling you all the dimensions. So that's that's why I want to say, and these are, when you're looking at a pundit, no matter how good they sound, no matter how likable they are, no matter how smart they are, no matter how great their analysis is, and no matter how right they are, right? I wouldn't even dream of trying to compete with Eric Jansen's, research. I mean, that'd be ridiculous. The guy's done incredible research on many things, but what it comes down to you is what's important to you is their calls, all dimensions of their calls and their magnitude, because in the big picture, I mean, if he invested a tiny percent of his portfolio in silver and he's touting how great that call was, well, so what? What about the rest of his portfolio, right? So that's what I want to say is, when you look at a pundit, you have to look at all the dimensions of their calls. And if you don't do that, you're not getting a real relevant number and history of their track record. And again, that doesn't mean that they are wrong about their macro views. Maybe some of these pundits have great overview of history and a great overview of the market. But from your wallet's perspective, your wallet cares about these dimensions, right? Your wallet doesn't care about how popular someone is. Your wallet doesn't care about how right they are. Your wallet cares about the magnitude of the entire investment that's being done with your money. So thanks for watching, and stay smart.